Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the Treat Show for episode 36 tonight. I am so excited because we have Andrew Hatch in the studio in Denver this evening. Everybody get excited. I will introduce him in just 1 second on the cameras here. And I just want to shout out, I'll be playing a very incredible video tonight on carbon-based nutrients, which somebody brought up in the chat last week. And so we're going to touch on it for a minute here. But let's bring in Andrew. Hold on. Can you do it for me?
Interview.
Thank you.
Hello.
Andrew, it's so good to see you.
You too.
Thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. I like the sound of my own voice.
It's a good voice. You just get all up in that mic, though. You just get real close.
I will just get all up in.
I feel like Andrew sounds too quiet. Is it on? Yeah, much better.
All right.
Ooh.
Yeah.
There it is. Andrew, it's so good to hear and see you.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh. Tappity tap tap. Those watching on Instagram, go on YouTube because the screen sucks on here. But it doesn't look good on YouTube if we do it for Instagram. So, anyways, go to the Treat Show on the YouTube channel. Pretty please. Also, should we just jump right into... Well, let's first, Andrew, catch up with you because it's been a minute. What have you been up to?
Well, up to my neck in trouble. No, I'm just kidding.
We all feel like that.
Yeah, I've been considering not doing the cannabis thing for a while unless I could find something that was pretty interesting. I've been teaching again at the Denver Botanic Gardens and, kind of looking around for full-time work. I stopped working at the place I was working for, really ethical reasons. And now I'm kind of a free agent. So if you like what I have to say, hit me up.
Andrew, we're going to get you so busy. It's like, you're going to be like, stop, leave me alone. I feel like it's nice to honestly hear. I mean, no, that's not good to hear, but it's nice to hear you actually being like transparent and honest, like when it comes to these things, because I think a lot of people are struggling in the cannabis industry right now, and really conflicted with moving forward or stepping away like heavily right now.
Yeah.
Not only is it financially, but I think that the group in which it attracts, that's been here for a long time tends to be like the dirtiest of them all. Like, I feel like between the owners and like some of the people you have to fuck with it's like, I think it's reached its point where everybody's kind of like.
Yeah, case in point, I had a dude pay like thousands of dollars for an assessment. And the first question I asked him, he ranted for like 45 minutes saying I was going to try to steal his employees. All I wanted to know was if he had a warm body in that seat. Right.
Yeah.
And then, it was a software-driven assessment, and basically, it finds the way based on your responses. And they were like, no, just give us the Chinese menu version, which is everything that could possibly happen in every grow.
Yeah.
Which they had no chance of like actually navigating. And so it was frustrating, but it was also kind of amusing.
And the amount of time that takes to really put together for a potential like incident that's never going to align with the actual shit show that happens. Yeah. Most likely. I'm sorry, but that's a lot of pressure on one person.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I had a good team I worked with, but after that 45-minute rant, we had like 15 minutes left to talk to dude, and he was an owner, and it wasn't a small deal, like a small grow. And so me and my partner had to like qualify, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I run this facility, I run this lab, and after that he was okay, but we had 5 minutes left, and so he's just like, give us the whole thing, and we're like, here you go.
Wow.
Good luck. And so, like, I've been frustrated a bit trying to sell science services into the industry because the kind of frame of reference for microbiology and product safety is just kind of not there in a lot of the people. There are also some incredibly talented and like skilled people in this industry, and I love this industry. I'm a grower at heart. I started out being a grower. I grew my first weed at like 12. And I'm 43 now, and so I've been
Yeah.
around the block. I've seen a lot of things go wrong, basically, and had to learn a whole lot of systems. Because when HVAC goes wrong, like I'm not the type to bring somebody else in. I'm the type to call, Belgium or wherever
Yeah.
makes the equipment, learn everything there is to know about it, and then fix it, right? Because that's kind of my jam. I love to fix things. I love systems. Um, and so, I've learned an immense amount. Also, like the latest horticulture equipment and technology has mostly been cannabis driven.
Yeah.
And so I was able to work with a lot of technologies that, if I were in, mainstream horticulture, I wouldn't necessarily have had access to.
I think that that's a huge part that people don't see behind the scenes of like real consultants is the amount of it's difficult to go into a job that you're hired to like analyze and like make everything really efficient and fix probably issues amongst whether that be like the staff, whether that be plants, like all kinds of things, finances, taxes, like goes on and on and on. But I feel like when somebody comes to you and they're like, okay, I'm going to pay you for, let's just say an SOP of a standard operating procedure manual on mixing nutrients, is somebody will look at you and be like, okay, I'm paying for this, give me everything, and they'll almost like rush this like time frame. Is like they'll be like, just give it to me, like, and it's like weird, but the lack of like respect, and I hate to say that, but I've been like pissed, and it's been something that you can't really like say or like in those situations, but
Yeah.
like you're like, dude, let me teach you how to like look at the plant first. Let me teach you how to mix this, and then we'll break down exactly how to mix it. Like, and it sounds backwards, but really it's like this lack of interaction and then just expecting people to dispose everything, and like it's weird, but they think that they're going to comprehend it just by this like scale or being written down on a piece of paper.
Yeah, and I got to give credit to a lot of growers because some of them can do that.
Totally.
But like the average grower, like isn't necessarily going to have a frame of reference for every working system in the entire place. And when you've got many employees, you have to kind of argue with a lot of them because
Oh my
like
God.
you can't teach anybody shit that when they already know everything. And so you run into that
Heavily.
sometimes, right? And so I'm not trying to talk shit, but like, I guess I'm talking shit a little bit.
Those are the people that we need to talk shit about. Like,
Yeah. And, I got into the industry like 7 years ago because I understood that there was going to be a bottleneck at some point. Large growers, if they were on their shit and were doing research, would crowd out smaller growers, except for a few niche growers, like medium-sized growers and large growers on the lower side, unless they were hyper efficient, were just kind of gonna disappear. And I think that's what we're seeing right now, because all agricultural commodities go through commoditization, where they settle out at just a little over the cost of production. And the people that survive are the people that focus on efficiency, quality, and risk management.
yes. I think as well as like what you're touching on is like I think this is a blessing in disguise is you have a lot of people leaving the industry, especially in Colorado, that were these huge chains. People think that it's like those guys are winning right now, but honestly, like it's almost like the guys that raced to the front line of $100 ounces and all this shit is like it's finally coming back.
Yeah.
And I feel like the faster that these licenses close, like I even worked for a company, I won't say their name, but they had 17 locations at one point in time just with one license, and they had 60 other licenses and like so many other stores, and they've been one of the first to like close all these places section by section or brand by brand. But I think it's crazy. It's not that I wish them bad, but when you like get detached from the flower itself, and like
Hmm.
honestly, owners that don't smoke weed is like, I'm
Yeah.
not saying you can't take breaks in life, and I'm not saying the older that we get, we can't like you got to change, right? Like you can't always be going hard on
Yeah.
whatever. But I feel like kids, families, like all this shit. But I feel like when you're really like thinking about like the best quality brands that are sticking through all this shit, it's like they don't drop the most perfect rounds every time. It's
Yeah.
like they've probably paid out at the ass to like just maintain staying in business. You know what I mean? Like they've probably taken huge losses on crops, and like whether that be employees like messing something up, or insects, or whatever happens, seeds like
HLVD.
fusarium. I feel like all these different, I don't know. It's like, I just think it's better if you have an attachment to the plant itself, and like
Yeah.
you value the flavor, and you value like the quality production, like making sure that people are smoking shit that's not bad for you. I think like health wise, being
Yeah.
conscious of shit.
That's helpful for sure. Because you know what? Like, some growers may not understand the risks that cannabis products can pose. But who does understand the risks is product liability attorneys.
Yeah.
And they are circling. They are looking to draw, causal relationships between cannabis and negative health outcomes. And so, it's a dangerous time right now for growers because the cost of testing is so high.
So high.
But one of the only ways to really prevent these product events is to do more testing than is required.
Yeah.
Luckily, there's some great companies out there that make, genetic testing equipment that's, not genetic testing necessarily, but they make various things that can be used to identify microbial risk. When I worked at a place, when I first got into the industry, there was no quality management system for cannabis. And so I had to kind of invent one. I didn't realize
That's
that was
crazy.
what I did
Yeah.
until later. But I adapted like HACCP and other like FDA and USDA standards.
Very impressive.
I don't know. I just get bored easy, so I'm never bored.
That's good.
That makes sense.
That's really.
I'm always up to some wild shit. Plus, I'm the world's greatest rapper.
Oh, we know that.
I'm
By
just
the
fucking
end of the
around.
show, you got to throw it down now.
Oh shit, I might.
Yeah, I'll start beatboxing. Don't worry. I feel like it's cool because you touch on all the things that people don't. I think everybody battles, but I think that sometimes we don't know the solution, or like I think a lot of growers run into it, at least commercially, even partners like that have home grows or whatever, is where they'll disagree with whatever system or whatever practice, and like it's weird, but like I see people that think that watering a plant all the time and keeping it moist is the best for a plant, and then I see people that think getting their plant to the point of like wilting is like the best way to grow.
Yeah.
And I have my own opinions, but I feel like
I know about you.
Yeah. But I feel like I just think that I don't know, like it's amazing because the plant is so resilient for the most part. But now since these diseases I think are really, it's not that I don't think they've always been there for sure, I think, but I think that between the insects, like in the last like 5 or 10 years, like we get way more insects than I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, that's a natural thing when you start to concentrate any species in one area. You see problems that are either microbiological or, pests like mites or, other insects. Well, mites aren't insects, technically, they're arachnids. But, sorry, I get a little pedantic on this shit. But anyway, you start to see with the greater population, greater risk. Because the larger the population, you see this in monoculture as well, in other crops like corn or whatever, things that are new to a region. Like we didn't see the hemp russet mite, for example, until there were a ton of people like growing, right?
Yep.
And then when people grew hemp, Colorado was one of the main places that exported to other states hemp clones.
Yeah.
And most people don't know they have russet mites because they don't cause a lot of damage when they're just a small population. But, that basically exported russet mites all over the country. And so I think over the next few years, we're going to see them in pretty much all grows.
For sure. Sorry. I feel
You're good. No worries.
I feel like russets, though, it's just funny that you say that, is every grow I have treated in the last 5 years has all had russets. And has no idea though, because
Yeah.
like, and it's almost one of these hard things that like I'll get into confrontations sometimes diagnosing russets because you can't see them without a microscope. And even if I show people them under a microscope, I swear to God, they're like, no, this is something else. And you're like, all right.
It's
But,
denial. It's not just a river in Egypt.
but I think that russets, they took one of my crops when I used to grow like fully organically and not really spray and not treat. Like I was like a beneficial insect user only
Yeah.
at one point in time. Is it was a terrible, terrible path. It was like in 2013, russets weren't really a thing or like something we were aware about, should I
Yeah.
say? And our like flower just started taking a shit, and like, and it was like it it was like we saw a slow decline, like looking back for sure, but like we couldn't see anything. You know what I mean? Like you were looking for like
Yeah.
webbing, you were looking for aphids, you were looking, and it was like our yield just started like slowly, like 10% lower, then 20%. Then it's like the flower started testing lower, and like we're like, what the fuck? Anyways, find out it's russets. And at that time, it was like intimidating. Like I was like, what do you use to get rid of this monster bug? Like, and now looking at it is like everybody I've seen has russets, and like now I just like actively treat for them, and I haven't seen them in my own garden just because of like constantly using like things like sulfur or
Yeah.
Azamax. Or,
So like burning sulfur doesn't work
Doesn't
on
work for
russets,
russets.
but they're still not sure the exact mechanism why sulfur kills mites. But also elemental sulfur, I'm not super comfortable using past like the clone stage on plants because it doesn't go anywhere. It's just an element that's like micronized, and so it doesn't go anywhere, and it produces like SO2 and like a bunch of other, like sulfoxides that are like poisonous. I mean, I don't know how
Dangerous.
else to say it.
Yeah.
Right. And I've definitely smoked flower where I've been like, oh, holy shit, somebody used sulfur on this too late.
Where you can taste it.
Yeah. Sometimes it was me. No,
Oh,
I'm just kidding.
I feel it.
I did that once,
Me too.
because it was mainly because a guy that I was friends with was like, no, you shouldn't use it at this point. And I'm like, I'll be careful.
Yeah, I'll
No.
spray it light.
I'm like, shit, you can only bleed so much out of your lungs before you run out of blood, so it's not necessarily a healthy thing to consume. And so what I'd like to see in the industry is like greater awareness of actual integrated pest management, like understanding the life cycles of the pest and where to interrupt it.
Yeah. I think that's like something that I wish that these like pesticide or insecticides or any of these treatments, honestly, I wish that they would identify on the labels better. Like things like that. Like I almost wish they'd collaborate somehow. I don't know. I want to make money off of it instead. So.
Yeah, so one of the problems, right?
So-
Right. I mean, that is the goal, right?
Yeah.
But, like horticulture is like the only two constants are death and taxonomy. Like, really, it's
funny.
hard to make money, growing orchids. There's an expression I like. I'm not a religious person, and it's a really old expression. It's man plans, God laughs. So I think it should be amended to be man plants, God laughs, because
Ooh.
I've seen some fucked up shit when when I was not expecting it, right?
Sure.
And then there's pressure on you to figure it out, right? There's a lot of consultants out there. There's a lot of blog writers. Just in case you didn't know, the ability to post something online qualifies you as nothing more than a typist.
Ooh.
So
The grammar is fucked up too, so. Sorry.
all good.
Some of the things I read on there, I'm just like, man, dude, like use Chat GPT or something.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Yeah, so like English is, or a language that's spoken well is kind of a prerequisite for science because like science, like law, things have definitions, like definite definitions, and it's to avoid confusion and to make things reproducible.
yeah.
I
like that.
Yeah, so like having a baseline understanding of those things is essential to preventing problems.
Can we touch on something really fast? Because I was just having a conversation with a close friend the other day, and we were talking about like when you use tissue culture specifically to, specifically what this is called. I do not. Is to eliminate where people can propagate like further from that. Like
Yeah, so it's called clean stock. I saw a company try to trademark that name, which I thought was funny because it's for example, in potatoes. My background is in mainstream agriculture and horticulture, but also in weed. And so, like, for potatoes, they're clonally propagated just like weed, but there's a law that you cannot replant them for more than 7 years or 7 seasons, because you start to accumulate viruses and other things that can pose risk to other potato growers.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see.
and also you just see a decline. Like, the more viruses you accumulate, viruses have a vested interest in not killing the host so they can continue to
Ah,
reproduce. Not all of them are so genteel, however. Uh, but like often you just see a decline in productivity, and you don't know what it's from necessarily, because not all of them, make weird, patterns in the leaves
like
or
mutations
whatever.
almost or something like that.
Yeah, like so a lot of the viruses like are rings, will produce rings, or
Mm.
they'll produce a mosaic. Like tobacco mosaic virus, I have not seen any proof that it infects cannabis.
I hated when that was like the fad previous to HLVD. I
Mm.
like that everybody was diagnosing fusarium with, with that. Like just saying that it was the mosaic virus. Everywhere you go though, it was just like, did you check it for the mosaic virus?
You're
It's like
right.
prior to testing.
Yeah, so like it's funny, like a lot of people get diagnosed by doctors in Colorado with brown recluse spider bites.
Yeah.
Now, there have only been, I think, one or two confirmed cases of that, and it was in people that had brought their shit from Louisiana or wherever. And doctors are under pressure to say it is this or it is that, and so they're like, "Oh, it's a necrotic wound. Yeah, it's brown
Probably
recluse, right? Like we're
the
just gonna
most
go ahead and
severe.
say that." And so then that makes it out into popular culture and the rest of humanity, and so all of a sudden people are saying, "Oh, it's this," and self-diagnosing, right?
Yeah.
But
It's not good.
people that study arachnids would tend to disagree, and it's similar to viruses, right? Like
Mm.
uh, virologists, like, kind of know what's going on.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like
I would
otherwise they
say
wouldn't study it for 4 to 15 years or however long. So,
but a weed grower will still be like, psh.
well, because they're also under pressure too, though.
It's
Like
true.
they're under pressure from like their higher ups and their owners and their investors, and so they don't want to look bad.
I think that's the most mis biggest misfortune of this industry. Well, on either sides, I think even home growers battle with this. Is like to a weird degree. Is I think when an owner like comes in and they, I don't know. I've seen some owners treat their staff to like absolutely terrible. Like
Hmm.
honestly, like
Me
where they're
too.
just like terrible communication skills, like coming in chewing people's asses for like no good reason. And like these people really care. Like it's weird, but I've seen staffs that genuinely care about these companies and just like get shredded. But I think that there's like this weird respect or like patience that I've seen like come from like people that have to treat like tend to plants instead of
Yeah,
like when they have a sick crop or something and they start like being so delicate, right? They start
yeah.
like, what is it? And like it's like such a I don't know, is it really to me that's when you see growers shine in a really weird way. Is it's like when their crops are in the ugliest places and
Yeah.
spaces is like when I respect them the most. Is like they really want to fix it and they really, I don't know, they have the best of intentions, you know.
Yeah, and then you've got the conflict between owners and investors and the growers that actually know what's going on. And so a lot of the time, growers are afraid and they do risky things.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a couple companies that have, like a grate or, like a corrugated plastic thing.
Yeah.
And, they put all their plants on it and they don't put anything under the plants
Oh.
directly to keep them off of there. And so then the growers will compound it because they don't want anybody to see the sick plants. So they'll put them at the back where
Mhm.
they're guaranteed to flow and infect all the other plants.
Same with investors, like you said, with coming through, like where the rooms have to be filled no matter fucking what. Like, and it doesn't matter if they are the sickest plants that shouldn't have been flipped, that they're like
Yeah.
TO'd or something. Something's going on that it would be more beneficial to hold them back for whatever fucking reason. Or you have like a lapse and a perpetual. I don't know, but everybody will start filling rooms and making sure they're packed, like you said, with plants, just so when the owners walk through or their investors or partners can see like a full facility. And it's devastating that that's what they're looking for. It's like, I'm almost like getting more and more against the perpetual grow. And I could prove this with like my yields, honestly, is
Yeah.
like when I pull a really big room, only say 4 to 6 times a year, but it's a large space and like between trimmers, all the work that goes behind the scenes
Hmm.
is like if the room is big enough and dense enough, it makes more sense to do that instead of like sea of green and like 3 of light practices. I'm not
Hmm.
saying those things don't work, but like I don't know. I just see this decline, like in quality and all this shit. And people are like wondering why, but it's like we didn't run plants like this. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't for 22 cycles a year and like, all these things.
Yeah, you run into problems like between actual sound horticulture practices and the people that are crunching numbers, right? And so, like, when you got a population of anything, like the denser it's packed in, the more problems you can have with microbes. And
Yeah.
so I'm very much against continuous harvest because they make sense on paper. But once you get infected with something, you can't get rid of it because you can't spray the things
Pause.
you need to spray to kill the things on the hard surfaces without compromising product quality.
And that's like moms. That goes into so many things where like people don't understand that if you kill all these things, right, it holds back a commercial grow like 6 to 7 months, just
Yeah.
like typically just starting point. But like if you really, really did it though, like if you could figure it out with your staff, figure it out, like it's hard though. It's like, but if you really could achieve it, it's like you wouldn't reintroduce genetics. You would have such a tight ship and you would probably like hone in on like marketing around a brand, or I mean like around a strain versus like the new hottest thing. Is like
Yeah.
you wouldn't be like searching for that shit. You'd be like, no, my grow is actually clean. Like I don't give a shit what is out there. Like I'm gonna keep my facility clean. I'm gonna keep my OGs. I'm gonna keep,
Yeah.
it's weird, but you wouldn't act like that or be striving for that to me as a marketing tool when it's really not good as a grower or a breeder behind the scenes. Like,
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, it's much easier to have individual rooms that you can just postpone planting for a day, right? And
yeah,
get in there and scrub the facility. I mean, perpetual harvest might work if you were able to get all the plants out, but the problem with perpetual harvest is that then you're going to have a lot more space that's not getting used to grow plants
yeah,
if you want to clean it. And once you get powdery mildew, you got it. And then you got to pay your spray team. And
yeah,
then you got to buy the pesticides they're spraying, which compromise product quality.
yeah.
And it's just a cycle. I mean, it would be, it looks good on paper, but when you actually add up the numbers at the end of the year, you're like, holy shit, we just spent X dollars on a spray team
Yeah.
that we wouldn't necessarily need if we didn't do a perpetual harvest.
That's exactly it. Like the packaging, the trimmers, like there's so many things that you're paying for and you're like
Hmm.
lying to yourself. Is you're like, "Oh, okay, I get $250,000 from this like perpetually. If I take out 6 of these cycles, I'm going to be broke." And it's like, "No, if you'd probably your yield would go up probably 30-40% immediately. You'd probably have less issues like you said pest and disease wise. And if veg is amazing. Like I used to love when I would veg for like 6 months, 7 months. Like my
Hmm.
plants were like trees by the time you put them into flower.
Yeah.
And they were like 13, 16 foot tall. And it was like, yeah, you walk under them and you just indoors. It's a
Yeah.
magical freaking feeling. So it's like if you have to veg for longer, I'm not saying you should like be chilling with sick plants and veg for like a year.
Yeah, that might be poor. Result in poor biological endpoints, as one of my teachers
Yes.
said.
But if you could like remove metric has it pretty tight where you can't really do this anymore. But if you could like have just the plants vegging for as long as they needed, like when they were
Mhm.
ready, we all know when your plant like really wants to go. So it's
Yeah.
like if you got to pull them like that instead of like, oh, I gotta have 28 of these every friggin' whatever Tuesday, we're gonna cut 1,000, and it's like, and then we're gonna flip the room on Friday, and then we're gonna trellis it, and then we're gonna do this, and then everybody does this and they slam their teams with like no work for 1 week straight and then a shit ton of work for 1 week
And shit gets sloppy. I
and
mean,
shit gets sloppy.
we're all biological organisms too. People forget that shit. We're just fucking basically apes that somebody dressed in human clothes and told to just act cool. Like,
That's
so
amazing.
I don't know. Like, yeah. So,
I like that.
understanding that human beings can only be pushed so far before they start to make a lot of mistakes. I mean, that's really important, right?
Well, and then when you start feeling like that, usually there's like this energy and these other layers. Like you said, these other things are putting pressure on that happening, right? And like most of the time it's money, you know, even for the owner. Is they're like, okay, I got a shit ton of overhead. This is all these things, right? But it's like if we really this is where the value of weed coming back is important is it's like this can't cost what a pack of cigarettes costs for reals. This can't
Yeah.
be something we give away all the time. Like it's like this value that we've lost touch with is it's like, dude, it's gonna tank the best growers. Is like they don't want to come begging somebody for $1,000 a pound. Like
Yeah.
and then this
For
person
sure.
come back bitching about like a trim job. It's like, dude, I just paid my trimmers like all the pound. Like it's like
Yeah,
it's
when
like I can't even like pay my utility bill now, you know? It's like these people
Right.
think you're rolling in the dough. It's like it used to be like 10 pounds, you know, would like make you like 50 grand. It's like now you look at 10 pounds and it's like sweet, like maybe I can pay my Excel bill.
Like maybe, right?
Maybe, like it's like I don't know. It's like it's not a good system. So I think I like you're saying is like I think if there was a value like this respect and this actual appreciation again for like the
Yeah.
plant itself, like the employees, the people that are the home growers, and just like people that are passionate about this, seeking the quality, whether they're growing it, breeding it, like
Yeah, I
I
mean,
love it.
it's I like the science conventions because like you see a couple different kinds of people, right? You see people that are from the outside world and really got no shot. You know what I mean? Like trying to apply mainstream science to cannabis without taking into account the plant itself, which is an amazing fucking plant. But it's got a lot going on genetically. Like it's one of those extreme heterozygotes. Basically, it's got you know you breed, you make one cross. It's really a hard plant to stabilize, right? And you're
Yeah.
going to get all sorts of different phenotypes. And with those phenotypes, you've got the things that you can see, right? But there are things that you can test for, right? Like to figure out more about that. You, for example, don't know how many recessive traits they're accumulating from inbreeding,
Yeah.
and a lot of those things are silent and just kind of, you know, diminish your quality, diminish plant vigor without actually like turning it fucking green. And you know, well, I guess it's already green, right? Trust me, I'm a
No.
botanist. Anyway,
You
you know,
know.
like without turning it yellow in places, or like,
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a guy recently that's seeing, he's a plant breeder and a weed breeder and a very skilled man, and he's seeing a lot of variegated plants turn up, right? And I think in part, like since variegation is maternally inherited, like you know, you're seeing inbreeding, and that, you know, after a generation or so, you can get back into the pollen, and then all of a sudden, you know, it's much easier to like pollinate 30 different strains at once than making individual crosses, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so you'll see like this OG fucking cross with this and this and this and this and this.
Yeah.
But what happens is that you start to build up these traits, and now he's seeing a ton of variegation in plants that weren't variegated before, and like, and bless the people that created this industry that took great fucking risk
Yeah.
to breed plants, right? But that, you know, that the constraints of it being illegal made it so that you couldn't have large populations to select from, and in plant breeding that is just like necessary, right? Like
That's what with all this legalization, I get so pissed that nobody is voting for like bigger libraries and like to be able to hold on to like or do pheno hunts, you know, like period. It's like you should
Yeah.
be able to go run 100 seeds in your wherever you're growing in your house and it not even be a conversation. You know what I mean? Like it's stupid. Like if it's safe, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
it's really none of anybody's business. I mean, but
Yeah, I
Sorry.
mean, for sure. Like, I forgot the point I was gonna make. I'm not
so
even
sorry,
stoned. It's
Andrew.
funny. No, you don't have to apologize. This is my brain. Fuck. Anyway, like, yeah, I got nothing to say. I'm gonna flip it back
Well,
to you.
I was thinking of should we put on this? I want you to see this video before we talk about carbon-based nutrients because
All right.
I just really quick backstory. I'll make it short. Is there's an individual that he's doing this nutrient line and he was like saying that he's like the only one that has this nutrient line that's like carbon based. And he claims it's not synthetic, I swear, but it might be carbon based and that it is synthetic. But I swear it's that he says it's carbon based.
Well,
And
not
it's
necessarily, because you can use molasses as a carbon source. You can use sugar as a carbon source, and really, like,
Well, he's saying he's the only company on the planet doing it. So
wow,
that's why I wanted to bring you on so that I could play this video I found on YouTube. I was like,
cool.
damn, this video is awesome. And they need more views and they need likes and subscribes. Okay, guys? So please take care of them. But Andrew, let me know what you think about this and we'll come back to this. Hold on. I got to click on it on the screen. Oh, cross your fingers. Just kidding.
I'm crossing my toes right now.
What are carbon-based fertilizers? When most people hear the word fertilizer, usually two things come to mind: organic fertilizer and conventional fertilizer. Here at Rooted Leaf Agritech, we are pioneering a new approach to plant fertility: carbon-based fertilizers. We are one of the first and only companies in the world bringing this exciting new technology into existence. Understanding the hows and whys doesn't have to be complicated if we stick to the basics. Firstly, carbon is the most important macronutrient for crops. The acquisition of carbon defines what plant life is all about. Plants use the power of the sun to generate the energy needed to suck carbon out of the air and reshape it into hundreds of thousands of different distinct molecules. Carbon is anything and everything to a plant: the zest of orange peels, the hues of lavender buds, the sweetness of stevia leaves, the fibers within artichoke hearts. If it's something that plants make, then it's going to have carbon in it. A lot of carbon. In fact, all plants on Earth are made of more carbon than any other element. Conventional wisdom has led us to believe that the most important fertilizer ingredients are nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and other micronutrients. So it's no wonder that conventional fertilizers contain just those elements, with very little to no carbon. This is not exactly how plants work. In fact, you could count up all of those elements, combine them together, multiply that number by 5, and the plant would still have more carbon in it. That's how massively important this one element is. The exclusion of carbon from conventional fertilizers creates a problem that eventually leads to globally catastrophic effects we can no longer ignore and must deal with immediately. The effects are everywhere, at every scale, from the nitrate and phosphate runoff that is visible from space to the obliteration of microscopic bacteria and fungi that are vital components of healthy soils. The big problem, more specifically, is that the use of conventional fertilizers creates an imbalance in the delicate thermodynamic equilibrium. This imbalance is impossible to overcome and only becomes more extreme as conventional fertilizers are applied on larger and larger scales. So what is this equilibrium? The leaves of plants are like giant solar panels that capture light energy from the sun and generate something known as reduction power. Think of it like money in a bank account. As plants continue to take in light energy, their bank account continues to fill up with reduction power, and plants can spend it to acquire the various elements coming up from the roots and in through the leaves. The acquisition of these elements, such as carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, and others, requires plants to spend their reduction power, much like the acquisition of bread, cheese, meat, and other ingredients for a sandwich costs money at the grocery store. Plants want to spend most of their reduction power on carbon, but the application of conventional fertilizers depletes their bank accounts by placing a demand on plants to spend that hard-earned reduction power on salts like nitrates, phosphates, sulfates, and so on, even though they are not required in nearly the quantities as carbon is. The more we apply, the more we deplete the bank accounts of plants, microbes, and even the soil itself, until everything is taxed to death, and all of the carbon, which was once in the soil, is now back in the air in the form of CO2. This is extremely dangerous because when plants become deficient in carbon, yields plummet, quality diminishes, and the ability of crops to resist disease pressures is reduced to zero. Millions of acres of farmland around the world have been lost in this way, and it's estimated that up to 50% of crop yields globally are lost in similar ways. Here's where Rooted Leaf Agritech comes in. Our revolutionary technology is the first and only to reverse this thermodynamic equilibrium. Plants do not deplete their bank accounts in order to access our carbon-based nutrients. They actually experience a net gain in available reduction power. Every time you feed your plants with Rooted Leaf Agritech's carbon-based nutrients, you are making a direct deposit into their bank accounts. With additional reduction power, plants have more energy available to deal with stressors that typically tax them and eventually deplete their savings. And it's not just the plants that experience the benefits. Our carbon-based technology also reverses thermodynamic equilibriums in soils, which helps feed the hundreds of billions of microorganisms that depend on the transfer of carbon from above ground to underground, where it is the most valuable element for all life. Reversing the flow of reduction power across all of these biological systems means our technology constantly supplies resources to plants that can help significantly increase yields, improve nutrient density, and protect the integrity of soils for future generations of plants, people, and this planet. The future of agriculture is Rooted Leaf Agritech.
What did you think, Andrew?
Well, I like it. The greatest reduction power in my account I've seen, was due to children. But yeah, so I mean, I would add a couple things to that. Like carbon-based life forms are called such because they're based on carbon, and so like the amount of carbon that the plant gets from the root zone is just dwarfed by the amount that it gets from carbon dioxide. Right? One of the most important things I've seen in adding carbon to the soil actually has to do with the microbial life, because they can treat it as a food source, right? And I mean, this is really well studied. Like the greater diversity of microbes you have at the root zone, the better your plants grow. I think it's like close to 90% of all the photostimulates, like all the sugars basically that the plant's making, get put out by the roots to feed microbial life. And there's some pretty complex relationships in the rhizosphere, like in the area just outside, just around the root, basically. And so, yes, carbon will totally contribute, if you add to the soil, will totally contribute to the microbial life, but it's hard to assess whether or not it's the carbon directly being taken up by the plant, unless you're using radio labeled things, and you can actually track whether how much quantitatively is being sucked up by the roots.
That's the most incredible thing ever, to be able to actually see it like that. I mean,
yeah, I use big words and hope nobody actually knows the real meanings.
that's the most beautiful thing ever.
I'm just messing around.
I think that the thing that I think is strange though is because obviously I grow with synthetics, and like obviously I mean like both, right? Like we've all used beneficial microbes. We've all
for sure.
like I feel like, and we all enjoy it. Like
Yeah.
I think that there's a value in a compost tea and like making these things for any type of plant, like even like your house plants or your vegetable garden, or it's nice to see a brew come together and like see all this activity going on. But I think that when we're talking about things though, like insects, and like when you are combating things like powder mildew or fusarium or botrytis or pythium or any of these, I don't, especially indoor. It's like outside, I'm all for it, but I feel like inside, to run an actual like living soil, or like something that would be best to run with a product like this, right? Like I don't think that this would necessarily be something that you couldn't run with rock wool, but I wouldn't. It's like,
yeah, I wouldn't see a huge benefit to it, just because the microbial life there doesn't have a lot to eat. It doesn't associate with the roots in the same way. Plus, you're typically, if you got a compost tea, that's wonderful. However, it becomes very difficult to scale because you don't know exactly what's in it.
yeah.
Living soils, they require tending. They require like testing as well to make sure that things are in balance. And so it becomes very hard to scale. I really love living soil. I think it makes great product.
Incredible.
But then, the diversity of the microbial life at the root zone contributes greatly to terpenes, because terpenes are largely defense molecules. And so, the more microbes you got, the more challenges you're getting to that plant's essentially immune system. I mean, it doesn't work the same way as it does in animals, but each time there's a challenge to it, it's going to ramp up production of secondary metabolites like terpenes and like cannabinoids and
That was perfect.
other shit.
Yeah.
That's a technical term.
I think that's it's just weird to me because I think this video is a great video, but I think that it's like you're choosing there's such different styles of growing, and I think that they both have a time and a place, and I think that there's a value in both of them. But I just think it's funny how, like you said, like a lot of this is like photosynthesis, and like a lot of this comes down to that. And I think that it's just weird to me that this is like a marketing tool. Like I was like, this is funny.
Yeah, I mean, I liked a lot of what they had to say. I would
This
add,
is a different company that I'm referring to too.
yeah,
So.
and this is a great video. But like, I would add that plants are made almost entirely of carbon. Like the structural parts of a plant are made out of long chains of sugar. Polysaccharides, polymers, and like, you have to get carbon into the plant to be able to produce those things. But the vast majority of it comes from CO2, right? And just in the air.
Well, when we're looking too at like uptake, right? It's like the reason that I really became partial to like my salt mix and things is because the plant is uptaking so much more than what I'd previously seen with like these short crops like we're talking about. I'm not saying in all circumstances, but like when you have a perpetual cycle and you're like running a facility and you have a lot of employees and you're using dosatrons and dosing systems, I'm saying is like, anyways, it cuts costs massively if they can purchase in bulk. It's all these different things. But I think actually the quality of the weed I've seen improve though. And I'm not saying it's weird because I definitely love soil grown weed, and there's a lot of growers that I think are phenomenal and like, and I just love their weed. But I feel like on the other side though is you don't see a lot of really good hydro growers because I think it's not as forgiving. It's like, I think that there is really good hydro growers though.
Like you fuck up, you see it right away, with hydro.
Yeah. And it'll get you with all kinds of shit. It's like between like your feed being too strong, too low, to like I feel like they're more sensitive even to like temperature, of like things like the water. I don't know, insects and all kinds of things. Like it's funny because people think that aphids are less than when you have like a hydro system. And I'm like, no, those mother truckers love water and they love hydro.
For sure. I mean, and there's nothing else competing with them reducing their numbers like in the soil. No microbial life much. And so, it becomes hard to really get the most out of the plant in terms of terpenes and quality. However, I like synthetic a lot because it's reproducible at scale.
And it's like the uptake. Like I hate to say this because I want to think it's different, but it's like the uptake of these plants. Like when I see them actually grow out, of like some of these old, like say somebody's running a completely different system, and I take clones of their stuff, and then I start running it on these salts and in Rockwool. It's like you'll see their new growth is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's like opens wide out, like it's getting everything it needs. Like when it comes to flushing, I think like you said, there's a lot of pressure sometimes from owners and like quick turnovers and things like that. And I think that salts, if you're really dialed in, like you're running your salts low. A lot of people keep running this shit way too hot.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you actually flush it, at the end properly, it's like you can't really flush long with salts. You'll kill your plants. If you try to flush for 2 weeks, sometimes like that shit will die.
Yeah, totally.
But it's like if you actually, I don't know. It's like once again it comes back to paying attention to your plant. But I think no matter what we choose to feed with, at the end of the day, I think your plant's probably gonna do it. It's probably.
Yeah. I mean, there's a great myth out there that like we grow plants. No, we just set the stage. Plants grow themselves, right? And I'm a big fan of like low, as low as you can get it on the fertilizer, because the plant, if it's a balanced fertilizer and there's enough, it's gonna take what it needs. And after that, you're throwing money away and you're creating risk that you're going to burn your plants or you're going to have poor quality.
When I see a lot of people like so comfortable with like using like these huge systems, like even salt lines, like where they just like they order everything independently and all these different things. And it's like, I don't know, like when you get to that point, I'm like, it's not benefiting you running salts. Like if you have time to mix like 11 different nutrients together, like go run some crazy shit. Go run like all kinds of lines. Go like do all that stuff. But it's like I feel like when you're actually like coming in and you need to feed your plants and you need to make sure that they're good, it's not like a lack of something, right? I would never
Yeah.
give my plants something that wasn't phenomenal for them in my opinion, obviously. But it's like I've tried like probably over 80 different nutrient lines, honestly though, and like had to run them comparing them to my systems and like adapt, from theirs to your own and like I don't know, where you can't be like you biased going into a commercial grow as a career. You know this better than anybody. Is you can't walk in and be like, "Oh, I wouldn't use whatever it
Yeah.
is." It's
Whatever
like,
magic sauce.
yeah,
Here's the secret to the secret sauce, by the way. They all fucking work, unless they're
exactly.
ridiculous. You know what I mean? Unless they're pushing the boundaries of what the plant will accept. You know what I mean?
When people start saying shit that like they're the only ones, right? Like anybody that says shit like that with marketing, I'm like, you dirty hustler. Like I'm just like, who the fuck does that work on? Because I think that it's like no, when it comes to plants and stuff like that, is I'm just like the more like science and the more education that we share, like I know that these people will talk and market themselves really well, and I think
Mm,
that's great. But it's like at the same time, though, the core of it is actually educating your consumers, though, like
yeah.
on these nutrients. Like instead of competing with each other, I think that these people should start like complementing each other. It's like
Yeah, for
e-
sure.
everybody buys silica. I'm like, why the fuck do you buy silica? But I think that everybody's really into silica and comfortable with it. But to me, like things like monopotassium phosphate at high enough levels or at the right levels, I feel like can help you combat some of these like or like calcium nitrate or like some of these things can help combat disease and like to some degree I think pest issues or like H2O2, like I love running it.
Me too.
It keeps everything kind of clean, the roots clean.
Yeah, and if you run it like when I'm growing orchids, I spray them with like 1.5% H2O2, and what it causes like damage to the roots, and because like apical dominance, everybody talks about, that's why you top your plants, but the roots do the same thing. They've got apexes or nadirs, I don't know what it's called. Like it's down. That's what I know.
It's down.
Right. But
You're right.
the orchid roots like will start to branch after that because you're causing a little bit of damage, but not enough to slow the plant down. And so that's one of the reasons I like to use it. Also, very strongly antifungal. Not necessarily very good for bacteria, like as far as
Different.
getting rid of it. But a lot of bacteria can produce enzymes that just negate the effects of reactive oxygen species, like H2O2.
That's where it gets difficult because I think that people that have been walking into their gardens and like felt defeated is I feel like they start getting intimidated that like what is the solution? You know what I mean? Because so many people come in and say like basically like you're fucked. Like
You're fucked, but I can help you.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. They all come on. Like, I see all these different pesticide companies and treatment companies coming out like all the time, and like being like, use my product, use my nutrients, use all these things. But the thing is that I see so many products that have been around for a long time that people aren't comfortable with using, that there's proper ways to use, that they're really effective. And I'm not saying don't like support all this new shit, but it's just like there is like these tools and like there is all these good things already existing. But I don't know. I feel like I've been obviously seeing a lot of sick gardens, particularly
Yeah.
not like where I necessarily work at, but I feel like the places that like for consulting, like you said, you see like this different kind of perspective or scale of different issues. Like some people will call you and it'll be like, oh, I think I'm seeing some spider mites, or I think, something's a little off. And then I'll be like, cool. And then other times it's like, holy shit. Like that has got to be like the most snow-capped weed I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's the trichomes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not powdery mildew, for sure. Like the best defense against microbes and pests is healthy, fast-growing plants, right? And That'll go a hell of a lot farther than a lot of things. But one thing I've seen with a lot of breeders is they don't really have a baseline understanding of plant breeding. When I breed orchids, for example, I select, I'll scrap most things before they even, like, before I've seen the flower. Like I fucking only keep the 10% that is the most vigorous, because
Yeah.
doesn't matter how beautiful the flower is, if the spike can't hold it up, or if the plant is sickly and needs to be nursed through. And so to get this extreme, vigorous growth, you have to kind of understand that you should breed for growth first, right? Like, and the plant's so heterozygous, you're going to find what you need if you got enough of a population to select from.
Yes.
But the baseline is plants that are vigorous growers, right? Like, because that's the best defense against pests and other problems.
So I see that a lot of, like, it's hard because I don't explain things like the greatest most times, but I feel like when I try to tell clients that, like, the lights that you use, this is weird, but I'm not. It's hard because a lot of people ask me about lighting right now, and because LEDs are like popping off for the last couple of years, like everybody switched over, had a lot of incentive to switch over. Their bills are a lot lower for their overhead. It's great. But the thing is in my opinion, and I've gotten to run like some really great lights, but like in my opinion, I remember like HPS, and I hate to say this because I like 315s, I like some other things a lot.
Yeah.
Like double-ended, like whatever, but I feel like the plasma, even, like, they all have like pros and cons, but I feel like if I just go back to, like, if I could honestly answer that question, it'd be a fucking triple X phantom ballast, like 1,000-watt light. Is like you always pulled a solid ass weight, like it was like a pound to 3 pounds, like, and I'm not saying this flexing, I'm saying like everybody was pulling this.
Yeah.
And like it was consistent. It kept your temperature in the room so right. I think for vigorous plants, like I seen all these insects and all these like things pop off over the last 5 to 10 years, and I think it's two things. Is I think the lighting has changed, and I think everybody got away from using filtered water systems. Is for some reason everybody used to use at least a hydrologic.
Yeah.
Now nobody's doing shit.
I
And
mean, a carbon filter is great, but RO water is not necessary.
yeah, exactly. If you have something though, it's like now everybody's just using like city water, or like, I don't know, like no filtration whatsoever.
Yeah, we also got to remember that cannabis plants hyperaccumulate metals, right? And so if you're just using city water and that water is contaminated with lead, hello, Denver.
And all those corroded pipes and shit.
Up. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Denver's having a lead problem right now. They're repairing a ton of like water mains. There's like 2 seasons here, and that's winter and like construction.
Straight up. I think that those are practices that I wish that these companies, like, again, were like going out there. I think everybody's kind of tight right now, but
Yeah, for sure.
I think that if we could, like, I don't know, go back to the basics. It's like, I hate to say that, but like, I do just want to freaking prove it to myself. Is I want to, like, I'm sure I can find a triple X in all my shit somewhere. And like, I'm sure there's something laying around.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that HPS lights do, any high intensity discharge lamp is gonna, it has the, like, bombards the plant with radiation, right? And so like, like light radiation, not like the kind that make you grow an extra arm, but and that's like a challenge to the plant. THC is a great fucking sunblock, and most plants that produce a lot of trichomes, that's one of their main functions, is to scatter excess light and to reflect it. And so when you've got these like high intensity lamps, right, like that helps the plant to grow, and adapt to that challenge, basically.
Well, and I think even like seeing, like you said, the growth is like, even like Pink House ran heliospectras, and those were like before LEDs started popping off. It was like a light that was dual. It was like HPS and LED somehow. I don't know, but you could change the colors and like dial in.
Oh, I love tunable LEDs because they're great for research.
$4,500 a fixture, and definitely, I don't know, but I think like I think it wasn't. I don't know. It's not that it was bad. It was just not. It wasn't worth $4,500 a fixture, but
yeah, because it's not within the realities of our current market.
That's the truth. Yeah, maybe back in the time. Yeah, but
yeah,
I think that like the Gavitas are like, I think a lot of people use those commercially and switch to those, or like the plasmas at the same time. It seemed like it was like the double-ended plasma
Yeah.
time. And I feel like the weed, it was weird. It's like the hash wouldn't wash as well. It seemed like the returns of hash specifically, I think, but the yields were a lot higher. But you had to have these lights so high off your plants because it was just hot as fuck. Like the ACs were always like froze or fucking up because it would get
Yeah.
way too hot in the rooms. Like,
And that costs money.
and that cost, and it was extremely expensive, like you're saying. Like, sorry. And I feel like, so that wasn't like great. Like 315s do great for hash and quality, I think, like aesthetically of weed. I think it pulls pretty good numbers, but it's better for veg, I think. Like ideally. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're stacking these rooms with like 200, plus 315s. It's like you can't afford to change out those light bulbs. You can't like clean all that glass. That's a pain in the ass. So it's like I feel like it's just weird, but when you start like looking at things and then the LEDs, like it's not that they don't work to me. And there's a lot of different techniques I see people doing, like where they're not turning their lights all the way up to like full.
Yeah.
They're running at like 75% or 80% on like the max instead of like
Yeah.
100%. Some of those things, but like I don't know. It's like I remember like the stagger. You used to checkerboard your room when you'd flip it. It's like
I was gonna say, like, I thought that was when you smoked too much to get a little stagger, but
it's like you used to like do every other light in there when they were like first going in for the first couple days to not
Yeah.
like blast them. And that worked. And it's like now all these people are like, no, we got to do 30% for the first 4 days and then we got to build them up, which is great. But then they're like trying to turn them down also late in the flower because the plants are getting too close or starting to really like show almost like this light. I don't know.
light stress.
Light stress, yeah.
I mean, just from an economical standpoint, if you got if you got so many lights, you got to keep them way up. You're wasting energy essentially. Like
Yeah.
I love LEDs. I think LEDs are the future. And recently we got LEDs that can actually stand up to flower. I don't know how well they do against HPS though. Like I'm not certain of that. Oh, Urban Legends time.
Ooh.
Mythbusters, but like without that trademark infringement. So I call it Urban Legends.
I like that.
Anyway, metal halides are not necessarily better for vegetative growth.
Yeah.
HPS does just fine, and it actually has a much more efficient conversion, like of power,
Yeah.
which costs money, to available light for plant growth.
I think these are the things that I want to be like on this roller coaster. This is where I feel stubborn. This is where I feel like I'm stuck in my old ways. So I'm just like, damn it. Like I've been using these now for like 5 or 6 years, like a type of LED light, and like in different settings and stuff and in my home grows and stuff. And it's just like, I don't know. It's like, it's just not... It's just, I'm not there yet. And it is because of pest and disease issues. I don't know how I have my own opinion once again on how they correlate with each other, but I just have seen things, and maybe this is like other factors, like you said, tons of other factors.
I mean, it's really hard to study organisms because they don't do what what we want them to. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They got their own agenda.
And they do have so many things that are coming at them all the time. But I think that this could be a piece of it, though, is I think that these rooms don't like cool, or they don't, the temperature of them themselves. It's like the way that they used to drop in temperature, where they used to get you really hot, they did. But then they didn't drop below 60 degrees. Like that wasn't even a thing. You couldn't even get your room to do that. And I don't care where you lived, really. But it's like now it's like our rooms are getting like too chilly sometimes.
Yeah.
In the winter, it's kind of like squirrely.
The diurnal temperature difference, like the day to night temperature difference, is important for a lot of plants. I'm not sure it's been studied well in cannabis. But
Yeah.
like in orchids, like it's, a lot of plants will not, those Phalaenopsis orchids that they got at the grocery store. I see a lot of people struggling like to bloom those again, right? And there's two ways you can tell. One, you got to put it like near a window as it's becoming autumn or whatever, because they need a certain diurnal temperature difference, like 15 to 20 degrees, to be able to flower. And then the other thing is that if the leaves are really dark green, they're just not getting enough light to be able to flower. They have to stockpile a certain amount of photosynthase.
Oh, I love that. They're like,
I invented that.
you need a hoodie that says that.
I invented that.
No, when you said about the horses.
All of it.
Yeah, everything. That's hilarious. I think
I'm gonna get a hoodie that says I invented that. Because, a lot of the time people don't know.
that's perfect. I think I don't know. It's like there's a lot. We were gonna talk about the tissue culture with how people can't propagate further,
Yeah.
like with these. But so cannabis is like I feel like people are like, ooh, this would be amazing as a breeder if I could drop these seeds or have these clone onlys that like somebody couldn't go through and, rename. I could say something, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I was like,
I smoked a lot of different blue dreams. For sure.
that's hilarious. I don't know. I think, well, how do you feel, Andrew, about like, how do you feel about all this stuff in cannabis? How do you feel about like the marketing? How do you feel about everybody's angles? Like, not just lighting, like all of it is like, I feel like, do you think everybody's kind of like cooling off where it's not so in your face, or do you think it's more like shitty now? Or
Yeah, essentially, shit is a good word for it. I mean, there was so much money driving things at the beginning, and now there are all these ancillary companies that depend on that money, and that money's drying up. And so now you have a lot of people that are just trying to use marketing to get their stuff. Basically, their brands, they need to keep alive, right? Because what affects the cannabis industry also affects, the companies that have sprouted up around it.
well, and I think that a lot of our audience that people don't like really see is like a lot of like restaurant workers and a lot of like people that work in the bar scene or music scene or stuff like that, where I'm not saying everybody, but like they're not like great paying jobs. Like they're not like over the top paying, career choices. So it's not like you can go in and drop $800 a month on weed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people can't afford this budget. But I think that if there's a way that we could like come together on like point systems, but like actually appropriate values though. I'm saying both ways, where you actually, respect and like show your customer that and do the right things. Like stop sending out wet weed, like or dry weed. I'm like, dude, just like say you're sold out of weed. And I know that they can't because they're like, I gotta pay the bills. I gotta like keep shit rolling. But it's like I wish everybody would pause on their perpetuals. I wish I could convince the entire state to pause and then this would create value again. Like just dry it all up and then do it right. Like clean up your gardens, like pick your genetics that you want to run with for the next 5 years, because I think everybody's became cutthroat. Like, I mean, everybody's known that, but I feel like
it's always been a thing for sure.
But I think that it's like now it's like, dude, like instead of competing with like the same 3 strains or like all this bullshit, it's like, no, go to that guy for that strain. Like go to them, go to the breeders, go to not just the breeders either, but like work with this person on one strain, like shop around. Like I think do like support everybody, like support your homie that does whatever, and like support the store though that you really like, the staff or the bud tenders, or I don't know, it's like it's a whole big thing that I think is like falling away because the OGs are like burnt out, super burnt out. I haven't walked into one sparkly glittery OG room in a while.
For sure.
There's a lot of soulness there.
Yeah, and like I said before, I love being a grower. I love growing plants, but really plants of all kinds. And what I've seen a lot of in this industry is that people haven't grown other types of plants, and that's where you get the broadest range of understanding really plant physiology and understanding like what different crops need. One tendency I've seen in cannabis growers is that they'll like react to their plants doing something weird by thinking it's deficient in something and throw more shit at it. And like really the sanest thing to do is to back off, right? Like it's to back off of your nutrients and see if that's it.
Yeah.
Because that'll tell you what's going on pretty quick. I feel like a lot of facilities don't do enough R&D because they're under the gun, and especially now it's like yields. And so the future of cannabis really, from an economic standpoint, it's like efficiency and quality. It's going to be efficiency and quality driven, and like that's going to drive a lot of people out of the market.
Yeah.
Because often you see one at the expense of the other.
It's so true. It's like some strains you can't even like. It's weird. It's good to have buffer strains, is what I like to call them. Most of them are the hypey strains, like not Z and shit, but like most of them really are like easy strains to grow for the most part that people get all like excited about. But I think that the strains that are hard to grow, like commercially, especially like all these OGs, all these diesels, all these chems, all that, like they're not really. I mean, maybe Chem does okay yield wise for sure, but I don't know, like diesel and like all these cushes and stuff, like they don't like that. Like they don't. There's certain strains like actually ghosts, like kosher. I think they're pretty vigorous for being a part of that like family.
Yeah.
But I also think that like for the most part, they when they dry up, they always look big. You know, they always look big when they're growing. They always look like beautiful. It's like this is gonna dump, and then you actually like dry them out and everything, and you're like, whoa.
This took a dump.
Yeah, it's just tiny. Like you're like, what am I gonna do with this? I've been trimming for 6 days.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my God. Yeah. I don't miss trimming. I mean, I trimmed in like 2 acres of hemp, like by myself in an unheated, barn at
sounds like
the height
hell.
of the hemp collapse. And I was going around like
Oh, you were
selling.
hemping.
Yeah, hemping ain't easy,
No, it's not.
but it's necessary. Anyway, like, and then I was taking stuff around that used to be like 300 or 400 a pound, right? And I had buyers that were like, "Can you tighten up the trim job on this? So I'll pay you $50 a pound." I'm like, "Fuck no, I can't."
That's
Because, like,
exactly.
my fingers hurt. Like, I'm not trying to do
My
that.
fingers.
Also, my friends
My
and
wrists are
family
popping.
hurt, right? Like, because I've drafted them
Yeah.
into that shit.
You're like, I'll pay you in a week after this gets done.
Yeah, right.
That's what our family. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you take an out-of-state
Struggle.
2-party bad check. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep. I feel like that's the thing. Is like it's the truth. It's like all those things people don't realize behind the scenes. Like everybody's like done that. Like I've dropped. I think that just like everybody's like there's been great experiences where people paid a lot of money for the weed and like
Yeah.
really were complimentary and all these things. But there's been other times that they'll like come to you for the freaking weed. They want your weed, and then they'll like.
Yeah.
Be like the trim. It's always the fucking trim job. Always. And it's like, dude, I didn't trim the weed. Like, it's like I
Right.
paid somebody to trim this weed or like do something. And it's like, if I did trim the weed, I promise you wouldn't be bitching about it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like trimmers are like the bottom rung, and they don't get paid a lot, and so they're trying to focus on output rather than
And they'll
quality.
cherry pick and they'll rush. They'll start hauling ass. Like,
Mm-hmm.
or they'll bring in like these crews that like they have no trim experience, like for reals.
Yeah.
And like you can't stand there over them all day. I know people want you to do that, but it's like, dude, like I'm actually growing weed. Like,
Yeah,
like,
like I wish humans could like just do like this is one of the reasons I don't like management very much. I mean, I've done it because people have trusted me to do it, but like I wish human beings could just do what the fuck they're supposed to without somebody hanging over. You know what I mean? But they
Yes.
just don't reliably do that.
but I wish that we could pay them more. But the only way that we could pay them
Absolutely.
more is if we were getting paid more.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is where that is like a whole chain. It's like these guys, when they're paying like even minimum wage, I hate to say that, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
It's like, or close to. It's like, but they're paying like 17 people. And like half these stores I walk into though, I'm like not trying to be an a-hole, but I'm like, dude, you've got like way overstaffed.
Yeah.
Way overstaffed. I'm like, okay, maybe in 2014, yeah, you need all this shit. You need all these people. You need all this stuff. But it's like, no, dude. Like, not nowadays. And you cannot tell me that your staff cannot handle. I don't know. I'm just like, dude, you're paying. All I see is like dollar signs of like, and then these people like fucking around or like standing
Yeah,
around. And I'm just
totally.
like, dude, you just fucking your owner right now.
Yeah, like-
and like,
Yeah, for sure. And like or being like too high to like
to function.
like to do business appropriately, right? I'm not saying like I'm not advocating for like getting high on the job, but like if you're smoking like a little bit of weed, sometimes that makes people more personable as bud tenders. But if you
Yeah, that's
fucking
true.
are dabbing like super hardcore and you come in and you're just like,
Oh.
yeah, this one's dope.
Do you ever get bartenders that like argue with you? I get like so pissed off. They'll be like you'll want something. I don't even know how this happens, but you'll be like, I want this, and they'll be like, no. You're like, yeah.
They're like, no, actually, I do know what I want, and I'm an educated consumer. But, they run into a lot of people that are not educated consumers. And so, like, I kind of get it, But like we got to get over this. Like my weed dick is bigger than your weed dick. You
That's
know
exactly
what I'm saying?
that's exactly what I'm talking about. It doesn't sound like that, but I'm like, go to all these people, support all these people, but give everybody a niche. Like give everybody like an opportunity to do something really well that they do really well.
Yeah.
Like it's like just stop going into these stores and expecting them to have 25 different fucking strains. Like it's like stop. Like it's like this is why all this shit is a disaster. And like people don't realize that, and it's not ill intention, but it's like I wanted to work at all the companies that had the best libraries and like had I'm saying like 200 plus strains and had like blah blah blah. And it's like no, when you actually see behind the scenes of like shit gets mislabeled and then these people are moving stuff too quickly all the time, and like the bud tenders will say stuff inaccurately, or they'll get like told to change the name because it's not selling, or you know, just all kinds of shit that you're like, no, dude, like go to these guys for these 5 strains and then go to their neighbors for, you know,
the other strains.
other strains.
That makes a lot of sense because it's hard to grow 30 strains well because, you know, the strains grow a little differently each one.
Yeah.
It's not like, you know, growing a ton of different horticultural crops like in the same thing. It's not quite as complicated, but certain strains do better in certain environments. And when you got 30 strains in each room, I've seen this a bunch. You got like 30, you know, like, well, maybe
So
not
do I.
30, but like
The canopy's just like,
right, and it becomes very hard to like work with the individual needs of the plant, right? You got early finishers, you got late finishers, and you got management trying to do 56 days at the most, right?
Definitely.
And so you end up with a range of quality, let's just say, and inefficiency, essentially.
well, and then compliance wise, we have like 48 hours, you know, to enter a harvest. And it's like when you really think about that time frame though, like in like the size of these rooms and some of this shit, you're like, dude, how do you not like go fast? This is where this stuff is like wrong, because I think a lot of consumers are losing faith in the people and stores that they used to buy from. And this is just like bad practice, like of getting repeated, I think, of just like this weird, all these weird pressures, like you said. But I think if we really stop and pause and we troop through, I don't know. But then I wonder, like, people that don't do this for a living too. It's weird to think about. But I'm like, are they feeling the same shit? Like, are they? I know that's weird to say, but I have done this my whole life, and like, I'm just like, are other people going through different careers where they feel the same way though? Like, where you feel defeated at the like. I've talked to scientists that have like their doctorates, right, and they have said that they can't get paid properly in their fields, and that they paid all this money to go to school, right, for like 12 years plus, and that they'll never be able to pay back their student loans because they're getting paid 60 grand a year. And then you
or less. I mean, I had one guy say like, you know, I've got PhD chemists like lined up around the block to make $18 an hour, and I'm
holy
like,
shit.
yeah, it's you know, education, I mean, in this country is like no longer worth the investment to some degree, right?
Yeah.
To a certain degree.
Sorry.
But you know, like I was working with a guy fairly recently, and he was like, you know, I don't tell people about all my degrees because it makes them nervous. And I'm like, well, I don't tell people about my one bachelor's degree because it makes them nervous. But you know, like, you know, education for its own sake is really what you need to be after, because like, if you can line up what you're naturally good at rather than just looking at the dollar signs at the end of it, then the money's going to come, right?
Absolutely.
Unless like, you know, you're in an industry that just doesn't make any money. And even then, if you're passionate about it, you can innovate, right? And you can solve problems, and you can help people and actually make what you need.
I think that that's like a really cool thing that you said. Is like sometimes when people are feeling down with business, is I have to go to them and be like, you can't, like, it's not like an ego or like asshole thing when I say this, but like it's like you can't care what other people are doing or like the success of other people's brands or whatever, and you can't hope like bad on, like, you need that, right? Like that's what keeps us in check and like striving as companies and independent owners, I think. But like, I think that some people get discouraged by these huge companies getting really large and all this stuff, right? But it's like you see that changes too. Like that's a roller coaster through time of like, it's again not hoping that anybody does bad, but it's just, it changes. You see people go up and down and companies go up and down.
For sure. I mean, there's an expression like you can't judge your insides by someone else's outsides, right?
It's a good expression.
I got a few of those.
That's nice.
They're all copyrighted, by the way. No, I didn't. I didn't originate any of the expressions I use, except unless I'm off the cuff trying to be funny or whatever.
I've definitely heard some original shit come out of your mouth.
Yeah, shit no one else would say probably. Because I tend to, sometimes like socially, I'm a little challenged because I'll say shit, right? That's true, it's true, right? But I don't sugarcoat it, and I don't like dress it in the multiple layers that normal human beings use to kind of interact with each other. Because I don't really understand them terribly well. That's why I work with plants, because I don't fucking talk.
Sometimes I think it's just talking in code. Like, people get it or they don't. It's like, one of my bosses used to say it's just for the funky people, because Prince used to say that. And it like really stuck out in my head. Now it's like when somebody doesn't understand anything of what I'm saying, it's like funny. Is I'll be talking to my dad. And I'm like such an old woman now. And I'll be like talking to my dad and I'll like get going, right? And sometimes I talk even faster than now. You've heard, yeah. And like my dad will know everything I said. Like he will like verbatim, like, you know what I mean? Like he has exactly what I'm trying to say. And I'm like,
he's actually actively listening, right?
Yeah, but then other times people will be like, what is going on? And I'm like, okay, I gotta slow it down.
Yeah, for sure. Like the friends of mine that I've kept over the long term. I was talking to a guy recently and I was like, I feel super awkward, like socially. And he's like, I'm going to be an asshole. Andrew, that's why we love you. Because you're awkward and you're ridiculous and you're
not awkward. I feel like
you just haven't been around me enough.
Should we play that? Should we find a beatbox thing for you to
like find a beat? Yeah.
Yeah, should we do it? I think that I could do this. I don't. Okay, wait. My aunt. Gosh, let's check out the chat really quick. Well, you could check it out while I put this beatbox thing on too. I don't know if you can see it from here, but I don't understand why this field, they have so freaking much compliance. I hear that about education.
Yeah. I mean, education nowadays is like, surviving. For example, plant science, right? If you're working for a college, like, you have to deal with politics, like not necessarily like nationwide politics, but the politics of an organization, right? Like that can be a huge impediment to actually getting shit done. And so I think a lot of educational systems in this country are kind of in trouble, right? Like, because they've got people that are basing like their decisions on economics largely. And, those economics are just not really working for the majority of people anymore. And so, like, I want to have kind of like a workaround, like a lab that you can take people just out of college or just out of high school, right? And like teach them, for example, like a tissue culture lab would be great for this because then you can take aseptic technique and you can go to electronics, you can go to medicine, you can go to a bunch of other things. One of the main impediments to anybody breaking into science without a university degree is the requirement for lab experience before you're allowed to work in a lab. And the only place to get that typically is in college. Right. And so if you were able to give people an opportunity to work in a lab and learn like the mechanics of what you need to do without a lot of the extra window dressing, then, like you could have people that were able to empower themselves to get better paying jobs and like really make a difference. But like, any community that doesn't have access to a 4-year diploma is kind of de facto excluded from the majority of science. And that's a fucking tragedy because...
I love that you say that.
You know what I mean? Like that's a huge talent pool. I mean, just looking at it from a dry analytical standpoint, it's like, you're excluding, not even taking into account the human beings, but the knowledge base, like the creativity that new blood brings in, right? And then the human costs, like, don't get me started on that shit because it's fucking awful.
Well, and then restricting people. I see a lot of like arrogant ass people in this industry, but then I also see a lot of like people.
I've never met any.
No. And then I see a lot of people that like are too humble, like too shy or something. Maybe not too humble, but like just too. They would never be out there. You know what I mean? They'll never get the credibility almost that I think that they would. Or the acknowledgement that would be cool to see those people receive than some of these other people. Like you see business is like copycat, and this is
Yeah.
weird, but I don't know if you've seen this guy's like copycat genetics or something. He's like pretty obnoxious, but but
Tell us how you really feel, Jay.
I know. See, when you say that, you just say it. Sometimes like I get in trouble because yeah, it's recorded,
Yes,
but
yeah. Sometimes my mouth moves faster than my brain.
oh, I just let her out. But I think yeah, he does this weird thing though where he'll like take whatever's really popular
Mm-hmm.
and he like reverses it or he breeds it really fast and he like white labels it. So he's like not the original breeder. He'll take it when it's hypey and like basically makes good money off of it. And he's like pretty, you know, like that guy 6ix9ine or whatever, that guy that was like tattooed with like the rainbow hair and the rapper kid. He's like a personality type like that. That's who he reminds me of. Like you know what I mean? Like getting wild like that and like creating this whole like image around himself. So when I see people like that, it's like I'm like, okay, he's doing it because he's like popular to some degree. He has like a bigger, way bigger following than all I've ever, you know, or a lot of people I know. He has a huge following, and I think it's sad to me that like I'll see like really talented breeders and stuff that like or growers that don't have close to the following
Yeah.
and like will never be able to like really share their projects or like their thoughts to like an audience as big as some of these people. At
Yeah,
least
like
now.
often like there's like an overlap between propensity for science and like social awkwardness and not wanting attention, right? Like a lot of people go into science and either science turns them that way because they've been focused on something to the exclusion of other things. Or, they're just naturally inclined to want to work in a lab and not be bothered. And so, often you'll see really skilled people just not make it because, like, they're not as loud as the next person.
Yeah, I respect that a lot though. Like sometimes I think it's tempting, like with social media and all this shit nowadays. I feel like it's really tempting to like feel like you could either fall into these traps or like to feel shitty about yourself because you're not ever going to be a part of whatever these weird images are. But I don't know. It's I think that people, the more like organic people that I meet now, though, like as a whole, like as just I don't know. Even the older I get, it's like it just changes where you appreciate the people that appreciate cultivating, like
Yeah.
period. And like you said, like plants, like not just even cannabis, but like there's some people. It was like really funny. Is one of the employees at Dark Horse? He's like one of the main growers and like spend there forever. Is he was like eating a peach one day and it was hilarious. He like came in and was like, Jay, look at this peach. And he like took a huge bite out of it. It was like covered juice, like
Yeah.
dripping down his hand and stuff. And he was like just so pumped on it. And I was like, God, you see this guy, like he's so like appreciative and like loves like stuff though. Like, like anything growing and like he's excited about all of it. And like
Yeah, I got a 3-pound mango the other day. I'd
See?
heard that was the upper limit. And this thing was fucking gigantic. I've never seen anything like
3
that.
pounds in a
Yeah,
mango?
3 pounds.
How did you like peel it or how do you go about something
So like
that?
normally you got like 12 to 16 in a case, and there were 4 in this case,
Dang.
right? And they were only $2.50 a piece. I love Asian markets. Y'all should
I'm
all
going.
go to Asian markets because one, they need support. 2, they like they won't like keep shit that's not cool. You know what I mean? And it's cheap as fuck. Like
No way.
I've been cooking like Southeast Asian and Chinese food for like 20 something years now, and I was in Fort Collins, or as I like to call it, the Great White North. It's
where
it
my
wasn't the
house
most stimulating place to be. It's like marshmallows, you know what I'm saying? Like there's probably not a lot of people out there that just have a passionate hatred for marshmallows,
That's
but
funny.
some people don't care for them.
It's true. It's a weird. I don't know. I love Fogo. I love the street I live on. I would never want to live anywhere but the street I live on. I'm really partial to just the street. But I feel like it's because I like went to high school and like
Yeah.
school in that area.
And you're comfortable, and like it's great for kids. It's like safe. Everybody's got like 9 to 12 kids, and
Yeah,
like,
it's true.
No, I mean, not
It's
really,
true.
but
You're definitely. It's not a grow friendly community though.
yeah.
Like if you're trying to do that, that is not the area.
Yeah, there's a
unfortunately.
whole, you got the relatively socially liberal kind of core of like CSU, right? And
Yeah.
then surrounded by a much more conservative place. Like I like to I mean, this is a metric I invented, but I like to go to the magazine rack at a grocery store because they won't necessarily stock magazines that don't sell.
Oh,
And then when I came to when I moved up to Fort Collins from Denver, I went into the store, like the Safeway or whatever, and looked at what they had as far as magazines. It was like Parenthood, Marriage, and like 17 different gun like
sick.
a huge amount of gun magazines. And so like
That was the majority of the selection.
I mean, not the majority. It was what I paid attention
Oh.
to for well, yeah, it was the majority of what was offered, and then there's a bunch of other stuff that like people are into.
Cock, lock, and pop it.
Yeah.
That was what they're.
I have no idea, but I've throughout life been accused of the ready, fire, aim thing. You know what I mean?
Dang.
Like, because it's like the scattergun approach. Like you do a bunch of shit, and eventually you learn how that shit works.
Yeah.
It's like the scattergun approach to humor I used, right? Like some of that shit's gonna be gold, a lot of it's gonna be mediocre, and some of it's gonna be horrifying, and you don't realize that till you said it.
Dang. You're right.
But if you say it all, you're gonna figure out what works, and your friends will hate you.
I feel like your friends will hate you. That's hilarious. I think, okay, I'm going to try to do this again. I asked for my backup sound guy to come, to come assist so I don't drop the ball on anything, but I'm a strong, independent woman. I'll do it myself.
That's as it should be.
I know.
For sure.
I am just a little nervous of, crashing everything, but I'm not going to. I feel good about this.
Yeah, the only thing I crashed recently is a car.
That is not good.
No, it's not ideal, but it wasn't my fault. It was a construction zone. I went over a crest, and there was like the lane was flooded. I just grabbed my car and spun it into the dividing wall a couple times. My son was like, he's 8, and he's like, that was the coolest thing I've ever experienced. My daughter is 12, and she's got more depth perception. And she was like, that was fucking scary, right?
Oh my gosh, that'd be terrifying with your littles, though. That would be absolutely awful.
Yeah, it was scary as fuck.
You were okay, and they were okay, right?
I mean, we were like a little bruised, but like we were okay. Yeah, the airbags didn't deploy, which is great because then we would have gotten hit by a wall of cars on I-25, So I just kept steering into the skid and gunning it, and luckily we went fast enough, and the car's structural integrity was such that it was able to get to a gas station, before making really weird fucking noises. And you could see the guts of the car, like when we got,
You could see it.
Yeah, you could see it because I hit the dividing wall on the opposite side, on the passenger side, right? Because we did a full 360.
Oh
And-
my God, Andrew. On I-25. I-25 is wild in Denver, too.
Yeah.
Like, wild all the
Like
time.
road warriors on the fucking freeway. Like, I won't be
Gosh.
surprised if people have fucking, car-mounted machine guns at some point. Like,
Holy shit, no. I get so livid driving in this state now.
yeah,
Just
I
everywhere.
get a little upset in traffic. Normally I'm relatively circumspect, and that may be a lie. But in traffic, I'm like, man, you risk my life in traffic? Like, I get upset with that, right?
Oh, that's the truth though. It's like so I've been in like all these accidents, and people think it's my fault all the time because they see my personality. But I think that I get rear-ended like by people going like 70 plus, like flying right
Yeah.
on I-25, and like I'll be at a dead stop because that highway does that. Like you'll come to
Yeah.
a complete stop like immediately, and I've been plowed like 3 cars totaled, like all this stupid shit, like over and over on I-25 because these people just be hauling ass, and it's like they're always like out of state, and you're just like. They don't give a fuck.
Yeah, they don't understand like the weather,
Yeah.
for example. Like if it's
Snow.
like snow or like rain. Sometimes
Like your
we don't
truck
have
does
the
not make
capacity.
it bulletproof going
Yeah,
through
for
snow.
sure, for sure. It
Or rain.
might be bulletproof to bullets, but it's
Yes.
not gonna make a fucking hair's difference if like you don't know what the fuck you're doing.
I've been trying to like stay high all the time to like just help just with everything. I went to Starbucks the other day. I know a lot of people hate
Yeah,
it.
being high at Starbucks is like a prerequisite almost. Like,
It was hilarious. My girls there, like I have like a squad there, and they're
Mm-hmm.
super nice to me, and I'm super nice to them. We just have our mornings together often.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this one girl like looked at me and she was like, you always come in like smiling or whatever. And I was like, dude, it's because I'm always high. And I was like, I'm sorry for you. Like, I feel fantastic. But
Yeah.
I felt like that was a good solution though. If I can just stay elevated all the time, most things don't piss me off as much.
Yeah, I just took a break. Like I haven't smoked weed in like a month, and it was like 4 years of like 5 to 7 grams a day, and just smoking ridiculous amounts. And it was hard to see from the inside the amount it was affecting me. And I kind of called it recently like the lights coming on a little bit, and like more perspective, a little more tolerance for my fellow human beings, although not much more. And like. I advocate like taking a break every once in a while, just because it kind of brings you into the present a bit. Like I was using weed to like kind of blot out the intolerability of my existence at certain points,
I think we all get like caught up. I think it's really healthy. Honestly, I've been trying to like quit smoking for just like you said, like a month or something, because I like rely so much on like blunt wraps or like cigarettes, like nicotine, right? And like, but even weed though, it's like I don't want to be attached to anything like that. Where like something really, I need something,
Yeah, it should accentuate your life rather than running.
Exactly. And like traveling, all this shit where I'll get like real worked up or stressed out, And it's like I don't want that anymore. It's like it's not that I don't love weed and all that stuff, but I feel like I'm kind of intimidated. Like I'll be honest, it's like the last time I quit was for prohibition.
Yeah.
And I feel it's just like this would be the first time of like genuinely quitting is like just a good refresh. But now I don't even get high. I'm just like, dude, you're doing this like out of
to maintain,
habit,
right? Like, and it's like, you feel bad when you don't.
Yeah, exactly. Like, or I'll get more irritable now. Like, the more like time, like if I have to like go all day without smoking for whatever reason, I'm like,
yeah, like dabs. Like I stopped doing dabs because like. The next morning I would be like homicidal. You know what I'm saying? And, like I didn't realize like that was because I hadn't smoked yet. You know what I mean? Like, I was like getting through the day and like just like I hate human beings. You know what I mean? But I think it was a result of the just the come down, right? Like is that your endocannabinoid system is extremely fucking important. And if you bombard it with shit and then don't and
take it away like
go
that.
back and forth. I mean, it can fuck up like a lot of shit. Like not just your mood, your immune system. Like it's one of the things that keeps all your different organs. I can't even say system. Apparently, but like all your different organ systems like cooperating.
Yeah, like working in good function. They say that your endocannabinoid system for people with like combat like cancer and stuff like that, it's like it makes it where you're not overly producing white blood cells. But it's like once that gets out of swing though, like you're saying, just in general, it's like I don't know, I feel like it's good to purify yourself.
Yeah, periodically it's good to take a break from things just to see what the world looks like outside of that.
I'm disappointed because I feel like I would be smarter sometimes. I think even the people that watch the show would say this. It's like, it's whenever I get like high that I'm like,
the last time I was on here, like, like I was like, yeah, I do science. Like that's some shit.
Yeah,
like,
happens.
And I was like, am I using this term correctly? That was really good weed, by the way.
It was really good weed. That was Dark Horse's, was it Bruce or something? The Bruce Banner? I can't remember. No, it was Gary Payton from them.
Yeah.
It did get me.
I'm a fan of Gary. I have no idea who he is. But I like him.
That was perfect. I think, well, Andrew, okay, let's try this one and see if it plays the way that would be cool. I don't know if you're going to like this at all.
Cool shit is cool.
Cole, he's my miracle child.
Hold on, this is a little commercial.
Oh, yeah.
That's perfect.
Commercial cannabis.
I don't know what this is. You think this will work?
Probably.
Should I try harder?
Yeah, no, this will work. Fucking elected official on Wall Street, I made a killing. It was extrajudicial. I got a plan, a script to flip. The man I am and gifted with a pistol, with the fuck out of anyone with my pistol grip. The track slaughtered, yeah, you bought it, cause I'm on it, recorded it, spitting properly, flaunting it like I got to be. You and your squad are squat to be, sloppily drop hypocrisy. Get semi-yarded, drawn, corded, left for the cops to see. Get properly deaded over a simple threat. My clip inject a different set of slugs to check your disrespect, so hit the deck. Or I'm leaving your dreams shattered with schemes savage. But really, I mean, your team's average. You ain't batting 1,000. I caught you drowsing, a slipping, a sleeping, dipping through the street and beating bitches for snitching and sneaking. Yeah.
Ooh. That was incredible.
Yeah, all scientists can do this. Yeah, thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Andrew. That is like,
Haters.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Everybody is talking about how incredible you are as a whole, and how great of a guest that you always are.
Thank you. I applaud your honesty. It's so rare to see that nowadays. No, I'm just kidding.
Everybody in the chat.
Well, every rapper's got to believe they're the world's greatest rapper, or like they just don't. What's the drive?
Yeah.
You
Did
know?
you not see Eminem, 8 Mile? You know?
Yeah. Well, I didn't see the movie, but I've seen.
You didn't see the movie?
No, not really.
Oh my God, you can do this and you didn't see the movie. Andrew, go home tonight and watch 8 Mile, okay?
Yeah, I'm going to go home tonight and sleep.
Not even the 8 Mile movie?
No, I mean, I watched part of it and it was cool, but getting on stage is hard, but that's where I learned to rap. It's just like ciphers outside of shows and just snatching microphones, because I was a little crazy when I was younger, man. I went to Atlanta. I got to perform with a lot of cool people.
I was thinking about having a party next year. I've never really had a party, but I was like, maybe if I threw, we make it weed and blah, blah, blah. But if we basically had you come and rap and do music and DJ and...
I can't DJ, but...
Well, we could have other DJs.
I could try. I break records, you know what I'm saying?
I'm saying it would be fantastic. No. You could get your freestyle. Andrew does all kinds of cool, stuff out in the world.
I'm kind of a weird dude.
Do you want to touch on any of your cool adventures, or wait till next time? It's up to you.
Well, so I trained in MMA, and I found out I'm really good at hurting people, but only emotionally. They hurt my feelings. They hurt me. I hurt their feelings. We both get a little misty, then we makeup grapple.
That's perfect. That's love.
Yeah, so I did that for a while. I went to Atlanta to be a rapper and did that. I grew orchids commercially for a long time. I was the president of the Denver Orchid Society for a while. It was me and a bunch of people much older than me. And when I first went in there, I had a chain and shit. You know what I mean? This was 18 years ago, 17 years ago, and I had a fat link on. And
was it a long chain, or was it a choker? Because that, I think, makes a huge difference.
No, it's around here, which might be a long chain on most individuals.
I'd say that's when your chain hangs low.
Yeah, and I'm just a larger dude, so I had to get the longest one they had. But I walked into the Denver Orchid Society, and they're like, "Yeah, I think you Colfax is that way. I'm not sure you're in the right place." But then I started talking orchids, and I've been growing them for 6 years at that point, and now I've been growing them for 20-something years, and they're a lot of fun.
We should post your plants on the website, because the Seed Bazaar website, because I feel like your plants though are so beautiful on the Treat website, because people would love to buy Andrew's orchids and houseplants.
Yeah, I've been actually hustling orchids recently. I just started getting orchids and stock and stuff for some of my classes, but then I was like, man, I need some money. And so a couple days ago, I just drove around and was like, y'all want to see some cool shit? At all the different, horticulture, businesses, plant stores and shit. And, I sold probably 30 plants or something.
Oh my goodness.
But each one of those I go to, horticulture is highly competitive, but I'm kind of independent of that. And so I just share my knowledge, right? I'm this is the best mix to use for this. I want people to be armed with shit that they can succeed with. Because for me, growing plants is most of my problems come from my expectations, my desires, my own like belief systems.
Yeah.
It's all in my fucking head. And so like when I take care of another living thing, that is freedom from that. And I've met a lot of people that
That's so cool.
suffer from various things, went off to war, and they're now like really invested in horticulture, and like I find that out later. I end up like making friends with a lot of these people because we're like just in public looking around like fucking humans. What are they doing? You know what I mean? Like, and I didn't go to war or anything. Like, I grew up in the D.C. area, which is like politics and gunfights, but it's not quite the same thing.
No, I think that you're right though. It's like that trauma and all these different journeys though, and like it's weird how healing and like cultivating plants can offer it. Like even without like smoking weed or something like that. It's like there's so much healing that comes with working with them.
Definitely.
I love it. The moss too. You work a lot with moss, which is like
a little bit. I just got it out of my yard, and I've grown some tropical mosses and stuff. But I like to integrate them into like orchid sculptures. You know what I mean? Like I take natural materials, like, and try to build something like it would look in the wild, but like that you can take care of, on your countertop or.
That's
whatever.
what everybody wants. And then you could get those little sculptures and put in like your little hidden fairy or mushroom or.
Yeah.
So cute.
Yeah. Yeah, like my daughter makes them. When she was 11, she was casting these resin sculptures, and she had taken little plants and put them in there. And I was like, how'd you learn to do that? She's like, I didn't. Like, I just thought of it. And like she was making gauges that looked like, like clear resin, but had plants in there. And I was like, how'd you know that would work? And she's like, well, there's no oxygen in there, so the plants will stay green. And I was like, you're 11.
Oh my gosh.
My 8-year-old son today, I was like, what's 3x equals 30? And he's like 10, like just like that. And like I was like, where'd you learn that? And he's like, I saw it once on YouTube, and then he just is able to integrate it.
Einstein children.
And so, I'm trying to keep up with them. You know what I mean? Like they're well on their way to outsmarting me because I'm like still basically a teenager at heart.
Oh, no. We know that Andrew's the brains. The brains.
Well, like I said, I just use big words and hope nobody knows what the fuck they mean. I'm like, yeah, that's a sternutation.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It's like sneezing, sternutation.
That's what sneezing is. See, I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah, that's I looked that shit up. So like when I was in the corporate world, which is like my job was just like the movie Office Space, only it wasn't funny. And like, yeah, after 4 years in there, I'm like, I proved I can do just about anything. I'm getting the fuck out. And but they were like, Andrew, do the word of the day on the whiteboard. And so I started using words I thought were interesting. Nobody like understood them. And then I started like going further down, and like people were still having a hard time. And then I just started making up words. And like putting ridiculous definitions. I'm kind of a social terrorist.
That's hilarious.
I call it social terrorism, like when you set events in motion just to promote ridiculousness, and like I kind of like it. Kind of like a flash mob, but more directed.
Still sneaky.
Yeah, kind of sneaky.
That's interesting. That's a good.
Beyond that, like I love nature. I love fucking hitting the trails, and like I like to go out at night and like just sit in the forest and wait until everything gets used to me and starts moving around, because that's where I find serenity and peace. My life will make better writing if I write it down than it did living, for sure, man. But
that's a good way to put that.
But like going out in the wilderness and realizing that I'm a very small part of a much larger thing, right? And like I can integrate with that if I choose to. And when I do that, it's the difference between swimming upstream and swimming downstream, because you're gonna end up downstream no matter what.
You never worried about the bear?
No, I'll fuck a bear up.
That's what I'm talking about. I had to like work in the mountains for plenty of, like I've lived in the mountains plenty of times, and it's like I feel like
I've never encountered a bear to
There's
prove
always
this
bears
out, by
and
the way.
shit. Like your trash, they're always like getting in the trash and like just
Yeah.
fucking stuff up. But anyways, it's like when you take the trash out at night is all I can think of, or like the early morning. And you're like, oh, he's gonna eat me.
Yeah.
But they don't really eat you.
Yeah, they're kind of interested in the trash, I think.
They
'Cause
love
they're
all
like,
of that.
It takes way too much energy
They're
to
like
fuck you up. I'm just
a
gonna
big dog or
eat
something.
some trash. Well, I wouldn't make that mistake.
No, I don't want to
And
necessarily
also,
pet
like,
him.
I find a lot of people anthropomorphize animals, like, so ascribing human characteristics and emotions to animals, and they just don't work that way, right? They have their own systems that operate that. It's
Yeah.
like that dude that,
Yeah.
that went up and like made friends with all the grizzly bears, and then he went when they had just come out of hibernation when they're hungry and he got fucking eaten. You
So
know what I
bad.
mean? Like,
So terrible.
trying to understand like animals from a human perspective only, kind of sells the animal short and puts you in danger sometimes.
My mom had a black bear one time above her head in a tree one time, walking this property that nobody had been at for like months, Snow. There was no tracks though. And the bear, it was a mom with her cubs. And it wasn't the mom in the tree. It was the two cubs were in the tree above her head. She was terrified, but nothing happened. But she like got out of there.
Yeah, it's only when you're in between the mom and her cubs that you really got to fucking worry.
Well, she was trying to find Mama. She was like, "Where is this bear?" But
she
said,
just saw cubs up in the tree?
Yeah, she was
hell
so
no.
scared. Yeah,
Yeah, I'd
but
be running.
She said that's the thing too. Is you can't really run that fast. I don't know. You gotta go
they
slow.
Yeah, they'll beat you, I think, uphill, but you can beat them downhill.
Oh, that's good to note to
Don't
yourself.
try this shit
I was gonna
at
say,
home.
how do we test this?
Yeah, well, you know what I mean? Just release a certain amount of people and see what happens. Like, get some hungry grizzly bears. See, a mountain lion.
They'll fuck you up.
Yeah. Like, I've heard the best thing to do is, like, raise your hand so you look bigger and, like, scream at them as loud as you can. I don't know if that just pisses them off, though. I ain't fuck with a mountain lion yet.
I lived in the mountains, kind of. It's like El Dorado Springs one time, and there's like a creek there, and there's like people that live there, like neighbors. But there was this cat. So this is really funny. It's like I don't know what, but it sounded like a mountain lion, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like terrified one night, and it was in these bushes, and I like went to walk up to my car, and it like did its like thing, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And I was like,
"Was it like a house cat or like a bobcat or like?"
It was a house cat, and I totally thought it was a mountain lion. Like I don't know how this cat sounded so ferocious.
Maybe it believed it was a mountain lion.
I really think so. I was terrified of this thing, and then I see this little cat like come out. I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I thought I was gonna die.
Yeah, for real. Like, for example, like my parents have a dog that is like 10 pounds, right?
Oh, teeny.
And this thing will fucking attack other like large dogs because it's always been jerked back at the last second. So it doesn't, it's not been bitten, right? It doesn't understand the natural order of shit, like jaw strength. You know what I mean?
It's terrifying sometimes.
Compounded by size, right? Like, so,
I have a little dog, he's a little chubby, but I have a little dog that he comes in too hot like that.
Yeah.
He hasn't been like messed up. One dog did bite him one time though.
Yeah.
But he's still soppy.
Yeah, I saw her go after a husky the other day, and I was like, Jesus, like don't fuck with a husky because those are just like barely out of the wolf stage. You know what I mean?
They'll get you.
Like you can tell,
cool.
like how domesticated a dog has been by the like erectness of its ears because like. Dogs with more puppy-like, wild dogs with more puppy-like traits were allowed closer and closer to human encampments. And then they had a survival benefit because they were able to get more food. They were able to, get more safety. And so humans benefited from this, like early humans, because they had a warning system around them, like to warn against large predators. Because like dogs don't bark if they're going to necessarily, like, if they decided to attack you, they're just going to fucking attack you. They're not going to bark at you. Typically, they bark to just, like, warn the rest of the pack what's going on and, like, get them over.
Oh.
And some dogs are just shitty and they bark all day for no reason. Maybe they're just hoping a pack will come out of nowhere and be like, hey, you're one of us.
We're friends.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I feel like, do you want to call it a night? How do you feel?
Yeah, I'm down. I'm tired. I went to Elitch's today with my kids. And
God, That's so nice, though.
Yeah, it is nice to find out your kids are braver than you. Either that or they lack that death perception we were talking about.
I think that's like the good qualities though of being a kid too. It's like where you're just like ready for it all, like coming in hot.
Yeah, for sure. And then you get bitten a few times, right?
True.
And you become a little more circumspect.
Well, thank you guys so much for being in the chat tonight. Thank you for everything that you guys said. I'm going to go back through on the chat and read everything. Andrew is too. I'm sorry if I don't shout out everybody specifically on this episode, but the next show we will talk about it. And of course, we will have Andrew back.
Yeah, at some point.
We got peer pressure. We have new projects coming up.
Peer pressure's a motherfucker, so I've heard it said.
Yes. And we're going to do some collaborations with Andrew, and it's going to be incredible, and you guys are going to love it, and you're going to want it probably. I don't know. But
I think so.
I think so.
We just have to make it attractive.
Woo, woo. All right, everybody. Well, peace and love. I hope you have a blessed week.
No.